what the Dark Enlightenment entails, and the best description of this that I can direct people to is Ian Davis's book, The Technocratic Dark State, which is about all of these people. The goal is basically to privatize the entire government and have it run by these sovereign corporations. So instead of the public sector, you would basically be, a client of the sovereign corporation, which would be ruled by a CEO who functions as a dictator.
So no, I had Steve Bannon on the show last year, and he talked about how these guys like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and the rest of them wanted to create a techno-feudal state. And I didn't even really know what he was saying back then when he was, I'm like, what? This seems outrageous and like over the top. But of course, I was wrong and he was right because it's happening.
How many people can you say basically own a private government that oversees 121 data centers in the United States that are tied to some of the biggest, most important, big tech corporations in the world that also double as military and intelligence contractors? And how many of those people in that category were also funding someone that was a sex trafficker linked to U.S. and Israeli intelligence?
So are you... when you say,
I'm saying shit's fucked up, Jimmy. I think it should be clear at this point that the U.S. federal government is not really interested in investigating white-collar crime because it works on behalf and serves the white-collar criminals who pay for politicians and pay their campaigns and fly them on their private jets and give them special privileges. And then the politicians, when they're in office, give them a return on their investment. Let's put it that way. And the investments are bribes or, indirect bribes. And taxpayers are funding all of this. And this is really a microcosm of what's going on a bigger scale. Basically, there's a wealth transfer going on. Regular people's wealth is being drained to build infrastructure that will enslave them, basically.
So they've created these private-public partnerships, which is always a mark of evil, if you ever hear that term, private-public partnerships. And they're taking the money that people pay in taxes to build a techno state that will enslave them through mass surveillance and through the implementation of 15-minute cities. What is their attraction to 15-minute cities? What is that? What is their obsession with making people live in 15-minute cities?
So I haven't written extensively about 15-minute cities, but I would argue that the goal there is basically to have people more or less corralled into an area where they're easily surveilled and controlled. And that's basically the interest here. The interest here is how do a small few rule the many forever without the many ever being able to complain or do anything about it. And so ultimately, this ruling system that they've been attempting to impose on people really around the world, because this is a global governance project at the end of the day, is, using big tech tools in mass surveillance to basically create an entirely new way of life and system of living. And part of that is to basically reduce the share of what the many, i.e. the 99% or whatever, have. So, a lot of this, became extremely, unpopular, but also like people learned about it during the COVID era because of, these groups like the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, bills itself as the premier promoter of public-private partnerships. We need to not own our cars. We need to rent them, and there should be autonomous fleets of Ubers that drive everyone around a specific radius. We shouldn't own homes. We should, rent apartments and then share those apartments when we're not there and we leave. Someone else can occupy the space. These were all things that were promoted under the guise of sustainability and other things at the time. It's really time for people to, pay attention to what's happening where they live and try and stop this stuff too, instead of, constantly being distracted by the latest psyop, is that there's this transnational group that Epstein was part of, but he wasn't the head of it. He's like middle management in it at best. And that these people exert influences over many governments, and they are not really overseen by any national government, nor really loyal to any of them, and that they're basically the one of the de facto ways our world is actually governed, as opposed to the public governments that we all know, which have basically been reduced to enabling environments for the policies made by these other people that are then filtered down through think tanks or philanthropic foundations. Think the Gates Foundation, for example, because what we're really talking about are the oligarchs. They're the ones really in charge. And intelligence agencies work for them.
What do you make of Joe Kent?
Yeah, so with Joe Kent, he's a intelligence officer and top CIA guy. I think a lot of stuff is going on right now, and I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it. But I think people should be careful in trusting former, quote unquote, spooks who come out of nowhere and are saying what you want to hear right away, because a lot of times what happens is that these figures will do that to build up trust with the public, and then they'll misdirect you somewhere else if you're not careful. So I would advise vigilance and critical thinking, which is often in short supply but should not be, about that figure in particular. But I think
you think there might be some kind of a long game plan with Joe Kent?
Oh yeah.
So I've heard this argument, and that don't take him as face value, that they're just setting him up to be the next Trump or JD Vance or something, and then he's going to do all the horrible thing. So it's very possible, but I don't know how it'll go. But